4 years ago, I buried my husband after the Coast Guard declared him dead. My 10-year-old son cried over an empty coffin because there was no body to bury. Then, on our very first vacation since losing him, Noah grabbed my arm so hard it hurt and whispered, "Mom, that's Dad." 2 rows behind us sat the man I had mourned for 4 years. He looked straight at our son, then turned away and walked off the plane holding another woman's hand. My name is Aveline Rowan, and that was the moment I realized my husband hadn't died at sea. He had chosen a life where his wife and son no longer existed. Chapter 1. The Dead Man, 2 rows behind us. I buried my husband 4 years before my son found him sitting 2 rows behind us on a flight to Florida. Graham Rowan disappeared on June 12, 2021, off the coast of Matinicus Island, Maine. The small boat he had rented was found damaged and drifting in cold water. His life jacket, phone, and wallet were recovered nearby. The Coast Guard searched for 6 days, but there was no body. 8 months later, a judge declared him legally dead. We held a symbolic burial outside Portland. The casket was empty. Inside it were our wedding photograph, a spare watch Graham used to wear while working on boats, and a few things Noah had chosen because he believed his father might need them wherever dead people went. Noah was 6 years old then. I held his hand while he dropped a drawing onto the casket. Then I threw in a handful of dirt and told him his father was never coming home. I believed it because I had to. In the 4 years that followed, I became the only adult in our family. I handled Coast Guard reports, the death certificate, insurance forms, mortgage payments, property taxes, school meetings, dentist appointments, and every fever that came in the middle of the night. I kept working as a school counselor at Casco Bay Middle School in Portland. I spent my days helping other children name their fear, then drove home to a child who had learned to leave the father section blank on school forms. Once, during a bad flu, Noah called for his dad in his sleep. I sat beside him until morning and never told him. Some evenings, I parked outside our house and stayed in the car for 5 minutes before going inside. I would grip the steering wheel, breathe until my face looked normal, and remind myself that Noah needed one parent who did not appear to be falling apart. By June of 2025, he was 10. When I suggested a vacation, he surprised me by choosing Seabright Cove Resort in Clearwater Beach. He had seen a picture of its starfish-shaped children's pool and pointed at it without hesitation. "That one, Mom." It was the first time in years he had wanted something before asking whether it would make me sad. We flew from Boston on a Tuesday morning. At the gate, Noah had been talking about snorkeling when he suddenly stopped. His eyes moved past my shoulder toward the boarding line. "What is it, Bug?" "Nothing." The answer came too quickly. I turned, but all I saw were tired families, rolling suitcases, a man arguing quietly into his phone, and someone in a gray jacket facing away from us. I told myself airports made children anxious. Too much noise, too many strangers, too many reminders of people leaving. We boarded and took our seats in row 14. Noah sat by the window. I sat beside him. The plane lifted through a layer of clouds, and for several minutes he said nothing. His hands stayed wrapped around the armrests. Then he leaned close enough that I felt his breath against my ear. "Mom, that's Dad." I looked at him. Noah. He's back there. His face had gone pale. I turned before I could decide whether I should. 2 rows behind us, on the opposite side of the aisle, sat a man with sandy brown hair threaded with gray. His shoulders were broad, but he held them slightly forward, as if apologizing for taking up space. Graham used to sit that way in crowded rooms. I could not see the man's whole face. I saw his left hand resting near the aisle. A wedding band circled his finger, turned inward toward his palm. His thumb moved over it in slow circles. Graham had done that while preparing our taxes. He had done it in the hospital while we waited for Noah to be born. He had done it whenever he was afraid and trying not to show it. Then I saw the watch. I had given it to Graham on our 10th wedding anniversary. The cabin seemed to tilt, even though the plane was flying level. "He looked at me when we were boarding," Noah whispered. Then he looked away really fast. I faced forward and pressed my palms against my thighs to stop them from shaking. I did not spend the flight convincing myself Noah was wrong. The watch and the ring had already destroyed that mercy. For the next 3 hours, I listened to the sound of the engines and wondered what kind of grief could invent the same scar near a man's thumb, the same way of leaning toward the aisle, the same habit of turning a wedding ring as if it carried an answer. When we landed, the seatbelt sign switched off. Passengers stood and reached for their bags. I stayed seated until the aisle began to clear. The man 2 rows behind us rose. Then he turned. It was Graham. He was thinner, older. His face looked sharpened by years I knew nothing about. His eyes moved constantly, checking the aisle, the exits, the people around him. But it was the face I had kissed before work for more than a decade. Graham saw me. Then he saw Noah. For 1 second, something broke across his expression. Pain, fear, recognition, all of it there and gone too quickly. He did not say my name. He did not say Noah's. He did not move toward us. A woman beside him reached up and touched his arm. She was blonde, maybe 36, dressed in a loose linen jacket with sunglasses pushed into her hair. The gesture was easy and intimate. Graham looked at her and said something I could not hear. Then he walked toward the exit. Noah's fingers closed around mine. Why didn't Dad come over? I swallowed against the pressure in my throat. I don't know yet. Is that his wife? I don't know that either. Can I go ask him? No. The word came out harder than I intended. I lowered my voice. You stay with me until I understand what's happening. You do not approach him alone. Promise me. Noah looked toward the open aircraft door. Promise me. I promise. Every part of me wanted to run after Graham, grab his coat, and demand 4 years of answers in the middle of the terminal. Then I looked at my son. Graham had already taken enough choices away from us. I would not let panic take the next one. I called Elliot Mercer as soon as we reached the terminal. Elliot had handled the court petition that declared Graham dead. He had reviewed the insurance papers and sat beside me when I signed documents I could barely read through tears. He answered on the second ring. Aveline, are you all right? I saw Graham. Silence. Where? On our flight. He's alive. Elliot did not tell me I was mistaken. He asked me to repeat exactly what I had seen. When I finished, his voice changed. Do not confront him alone. He saw us. That does not change what I just said. If that man is Graham, this is no longer only a marriage problem. His death certificate may be invalidated. The insurance claims will be reviewed. A false identity could involve state and federal offenses. A cold feeling moved through me. Am I in trouble? You acted on official reports and a court order. That matters. But you may still be questioned because you received the benefits. Do not post anything. Do not threaten him. Do not search his belongings. Write down only what you personally observe. Noah stood beside me, listening. Elliot said he would fly to Florida and contact a licensed private investigator named Rhea Caldwell. At baggage claim, I saw Graham again. He and the woman were walking toward a resort shuttle. The logo on the side read Seabright Cove, the same resort I had booked 8 weeks earlier. Same day, same flight, 2 rows apart, same resort. That was not a coincidence I could explain away. I took Noah to the taxi line instead. On the ride, I called the resort and asked them not to disclose our room number or connect calls from anyone who could not verify my name. When we entered the lobby, I kept Noah close. A bell attendant passed us carrying a dark duffel bag I recognized from the airplane. A luggage tag hung from the handle. The name printed on it was Grant Reyes. Near the elevators, the blonde woman lifted one hand. "Grant, are you coming?" Graham turned. He did not look at me. He looked at Noah. For one long second, the pain in his face was impossible to mistake. Then the elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside beside her. Noah watched the doors close. If that's Dad, why is she calling him Grant? I had no answer that would not frighten him more. I had not simply found the husband I buried. I had found a man who had spent 4 years building a life in which his wife and son had never existed. Chapter 2. The Name He Stole. I did not sleep that night. Every sound in the hallway pulled my attention toward the door. The elevator chimed twice after midnight, and both times Noah sat up in the other bed before pretending he had not. By morning, he no longer wanted to see the starfish pool. He sat cross-legged near the window, watching the courtyard instead. "Do you think he remembers my birthday?" he asked. I looked at him. "Do you think he knows what grade I am in?" I sat beside him and pulled the curtain closed. "I do not know. Is that lady his new wife?" "I do not know that either." He picked at a loose thread on the blanket. "Can he disappear again?" That question hurt more than the others, because it revealed what hope had already done to him. Seeing Graham alive had not made Noah feel safer. It had simply given him another way to lose his father. I told him Elliot was coming, and that my friend Sloane would stay with him while I figured out what was happening. Noah stared at the carpet. "I am sorry I saw him." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "If I had not said anything, we could have just gone swimming." I took his face gently between my hands. "You did not create this lie. You were only the first person brave enough to see it." He nodded, but children do not stop blaming themselves simply because an adult tells them to. I asked the resort to move us to a different wing and keep our new room number private. I did not explain more than necessary. By 10 that morning, Elliot had arrived from Maine, still wearing the same navy suit he wore to every serious meeting. Sloane Beckett arrived an hour later, with a backpack full of snacks, card games, and the calm confidence of someone who had watched me hold my life together with both hands for years. She hugged Noah first. "I brought enough junk food to ruin your lunch," she told him. That earned the first small smile I had seen since the airplane. Elliot introduced me to Rhea Caldwell in a quiet corner of the hotel lounge. She was 48, compact, direct, and carried no visible weapon or dramatic air of mystery. "I am a licensed private investigator," she said. "I used to work financial fraud. I do not hack accounts, bribe hotel staff, trespass, or record conversations I am not legally part of. I use public records, lawful observation, and information you have the right to provide." That was exactly what I needed to hear. I did not want revenge that would make me reckless. I wanted facts strong enough that Graham could no longer rearrange them. Rhea started with the rental car. By noon, she had confirmed that Grant Reyes held a Nevada driver's license issued in 2022 and listed an address in Henderson. His credit history began after Graham disappeared. His profession was listed as independent supply chain consultant. No marriage record, no children. The identity looked clean until Rhea found a connection to the birth record of a boy named Grant Reyes, who had died decades earlier. "Not proof yet," she said, but it suggests someone built this identity instead of merely changing a name. Elliot sent the information to an identity verification specialist rather than trying to handle it himself. While they worked, I saw the blonde woman from the plane sitting alone near the pool. Sloane was upstairs with Noah. Rhea knew where I was. I walked over and chose a chair 2 loungers away. "The heat is worse than the brochure promised," I said. She laughed. The brochure also promised quiet mornings. Her name was Tessa Monroe. She managed event programs for a hotel group and lived in Ohio before moving west for work. She was warm, easy to talk to, and completely unguarded. Eventually she mentioned Grant. She said they had been together almost 2 years. He was a widower, she told me. His wife had died after a short illness. I kept my expression still. Did they have children? No. Tessa lowered her voice. He told me that was one of the hardest parts. They always wanted kids, but it never happened. Above us, somewhere behind tinted glass, Graham's 10-year-old son was afraid to walk into the hallway. Tessa said Grant had moved west because everything back east reminded him of the life he had lost. Then she showed me pictures. Graham on a hiking trail. Graham cooking in a kitchen I had never seen. Graham smiling beside Tessa at an anniversary dinner. In the last photograph, his left hand rested on the table. He still wore his wedding ring. The band was turned inward against his palm. He had not forgotten us. Every morning, for years, he had looked at that ring and chosen to hide it. I did not feel anger toward Tessa. While she had spent 2 years believing she was building a future with Grant, I had spent those same years attending parent conferences alone, repairing a leaking roof, and sitting beside Noah during nights when the sound of ocean waves made him panic. Tessa had not taken my husband. Graham had taken the truth from both of us. I excused myself before she noticed my hands shaking. Back in Elliot's room, I called Maya and Thomas Rowan. Graham's mother did not believe me until I sent the photograph. Then she stopped speaking. When her voice returned, it sounded smaller. "He is alive?" "Yes." "Where is he?" "At this resort." "Can I talk to him?" "I do not know if that is safe yet." "What about Noah? Does he get to see his father?" "That decision does not belong to Graham," I said. "It does not belong to you or Thomas either. It depends on what is safe for Noah and what he can handle." Maya began to cry. Thomas took the phone. He had worked as a marine mechanic most of his life. When I described the boat, the location, and the recovered equipment, he went quiet. "Graham knew enough about boats and those waters to make an accident look real," he said. The words seemed to cost him something. They had buried their son too. Now they had to understand that he had allowed them to. That afternoon, Rhea followed Graham's rental car to a diner in Largo. Noah stayed with Sloane. Rhea watched from a public parking space and sent Elliot a photograph of the man Graham met. "Walter Keene," she said when I arrived later. "Former customs auditor, longtime advisor to Vane Maritime Solutions." The name meant nothing to me then. It would soon mean almost everything. Walter had helped establish Grant Reyes. He was also connected to the false location signals surrounding Graham's disappearance, and had maintained quiet contact with him afterward. Through the diner window, I saw Walter slide a folder across the table. Rhea did not record them. I entered only after she said it was safe, passed their booth on my way to the restroom, and caught 3 fragments. Documents. Accounts. "You were supposed to stay gone." Graham did not see me, or if he did, he had become very good at hiding recognition. By early evening, Rhea had located Jared Pike, a former operations manager at Vane Maritime. Elliot contacted him through legal channels. Jared confirmed that Graham had once raised concerns about shell companies, mismatched shipping invoices, and cargo routes that did not match customs declarations. He had requested an internal audit. Then, Malcolm Vane mentioned Aveline and Noah in a closed meeting. Graham withdrew the request. Jared had kept copies of several emails because he feared the records would disappear. That mattered. Whatever Graham eventually claimed, the truth would not depend only on his word. Rhea found one more thing. With my permission, she reviewed the security history of an old family email account. Graham still had recovery access linked to a device he had used before disappearing. A travel confirmation for Seabright Cove had been automatically forwarded to another address. There had been a login from Nevada. Less than 48 hours later, Grant Reyes changed an existing vacation booking with Tessa to our flight and our resort. He had not brought her as some carefully designed cover. Their trip already existed. He had redirected it toward us. He knew exactly where Noah and I would be. That evening, I saw Graham standing near the courtyard, staring toward the room we had already left. I approached, but stopped several yards away. "Did you follow us here to come back?" I asked, "or just to watch us keep living without you?" His face changed. Before he could answer, a dark sedan moved slowly through the resort entrance. Graham stepped back into the shadow of a palm tree. For the first time in 4 years, I heard his voice directed at me. "Get Noah out of here. Right now." The fear in his eyes was real. So was the fact that he had brought that fear back to our door without giving me a choice. I still did not know whether Graham was trying to protect us or control us with another half-truth. But as the sedan disappeared beyond the lobby, I understood that he might not be the only person who had been watching my family. Chapter 3. Why he left and why he stayed. Gone. I called Elliot before I moved. Rhea was already crossing the courtyard toward us, her attention fixed on the driveway where the sedan had disappeared. "Do not go back to your room," she said. "Not yet." I told her what Graham had said. She did not dismiss the warning, but she did not let it control us either. Within minutes, Elliot had contacted resort security. Sloan packed Noah's things while I kept him in the lounge with a deck of cards he was not really playing. We moved him to another hotel under Elliot's reservation. Noah asked why we were leaving the place he had chosen. I told him there might be people connected to Graham who knew we were there. He looked at me for a long moment. "Are they bad people?" "I do not know yet." "Is Dad one of them?" That was the question I could not answer. Sloan took Noah to the new hotel, while I stayed with Elliot and Rhea. Rhea traced the sedan to a security contractor that had done work for a company connected to Vane Maritime Solutions. The threat was real enough to leave a paper trail. That made me angrier, not calmer. Graham had known someone might still be watching him. He had still changed his vacation to our flight and our resort. He had brought danger close to Noah without giving me any choice in the matter. An hour later, Graham sent a message through Elliot asking to speak with me. I agreed, but only under conditions I controlled. We met in a small conference room near the resort business center. Elliot waited in the room next door. Rhea knew the exact time and location. The hallway camera was active. Noah was nowhere near the building. Graham stood when I entered. For a second, my body remembered him before my mind did. The way he shifted his weight when nervous. The way his left hand opened and closed at his side. The faint line beside his mouth that had deepened since I last saw him. Then I remembered the empty casket. I stayed standing. "You start at the beginning," I said. "You do not leave out anything because it makes you look worse." He nodded. "And do not tell me you did all of this for us, as if that explains 4 years." His face tightened. "I understand." "No, you do not. Start talking." In 2020, Graham had been Director of Operations at Vane Maritime Solutions. The company was headquartered in Boston and managed shipping contracts through Portland, Norfolk,
and several smaller ports. At first, the problems looked like accounting mistakes. Container weights did not match customs declarations. Repair invoices were being paid to limited liability companies with no employees. Cargo listed as industrial components moved through routes that made no commercial sense.
Large transfers passed through layers of shell companies before returning to accounts connected to Vane executives. Graham requested an internal audit. Walter Keene told him to withdraw it. Graham refused. A week later, Malcolm Vane invited him into a closed meeting. He mentioned Harbor Ridge Elementary, Graham said. My stomach tightened. He knew what time Noah's class got out. He knew the route you drove home from Casco Bay. He knew Mrs. Bell was Noah's first-grade teacher. Mrs. Bell had been Noah's teacher the year Graham disappeared. What exactly did he say? Nothing I could take to the police. He said it was good to know the families of key employees were settled into predictable routines. No direct threat, just proof that they knew where we were. Graham believed local authorities could not protect us from a company with money, attorneys, security contractors, and relationships throughout the shipping industry. So he created his own solution. He rented the boat under his real name. He chose waters near Matinicus Island, where currents and cold temperatures made survival unlikely. Walter arranged a route off the island, and people who could move Graham without creating a record. They generated false location signals. They made sure his phone and life jacket would be found. They helped construct the identity of Grant Reyes. Graham believed that once Malcolm Vane thought him dead, Noah and I would stop being useful as leverage. I thought it would be temporary, he said. I stared at him. You let me bury you. I know. You let Noah put a drawing in an empty coffin. His eyes dropped. I know. You do not get to keep saying that like knowing is the same as carrying it. He looked up again. I asked the question that mattered more than the boat, the documents, or Malcolm Vane. If the reason you left was real, why did you stay gone for 4 years? He was silent, long enough that I heard the air conditioner turn off. For the first year, maybe a year and a half, I thought they were still watching you. And after that, it became less frequent. By when? By 2023, I knew the immediate surveillance had probably stopped. The answer landed harder than I expected. By 2023, I had already spent nearly 2 years teaching Noah how to live without his father. You could have called Elliot. Yes. You could have gone to federal authorities. Yes. You could have sent one message telling me you were alive. Yes. Then why did you not? His voice lowered. I was afraid of being prosecuted. I was afraid you would hate me. I was afraid Noah would not know me anymore. Every month I stayed away made it harder to imagine coming back. That is not protection. I know. No, that was fear. Then it became convenience. He flinched. I told myself you were doing better without me. You told yourself a story that allowed you to keep hiding. He did not argue. Graham admitted he had followed our lives through school websites, public announcements, and the old family email account. He knew Noah had changed classrooms. He knew I had moved into the counselor position at Casco Bay. He knew Maya had knee surgery. He knew Thomas had sold his boat. I needed to know you were safe, he said. You knew Noah was growing up, but you did not help raise him. You knew I was carrying everything, but you did not give me the truth. You were not protecting us from a distance. You were watching us live with the consequences because you were too afraid to step into them. The words left him visibly smaller. Then I asked about Tessa. He said they met near the end of 2023. Grant Reyes needed a history that could not be checked too closely, so Graham told her he was a widower. He said he had no children because any connection to Noah might expose the identity.
Tessa was not part of your survival plan, I said. She was another person you denied the right to choose.
His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I know. That time, the words sounded less like defense and more like defeat. Graham took a small encrypted drive from inside his jacket and placed it on the table.
This is not the only copy. He explained that the larger archive was stored in a protected cloud vault with an automatic release system. Jared Pike held emails and internal reports. The drive contained records of shell companies, cargo routes, transfers, and messages connected to Walter and other Vane executives. I did not touch it. I called Elliot into the room. He recorded the time, placed the drive in an evidence bag, sealed it, and signed across the closure. He did not open it. Later that afternoon, Elliot contacted Special Agent Lena Ortiz, who worked financial and transportation crimes.
She told us federal investigators had already been examining companies connected to Vane for almost 2 years. Graham's evidence could help, but it would not be treated as a magical answer to the entire case. A forensic accountant would compare it with banking records, customs filings, and corporate documents. That mattered to me. The truth could not depend only on a man who had already lied to everyone who loved him. Before we left the resort, Sloane returned with Noah to collect a bag she had missed. I was still speaking with Elliot when Noah saw Graham through the glass wall of the lobby. Graham stopped. He did not approach. Noah stood beside Sloane, pale but steady. Dad? Graham's face broke at the sound. Noah did not move closer. You knew what school I went to, right? Graham looked at me, then back at Noah. Yes. Why didn't you come? I was scared. Noah's eyes filled, but he did not cry. I was scared you were dead. I didn't get to hide. Sloane placed a hand on his shoulder and led him away before he had to carry anything else. Graham watched until the doors closed behind them. Then he said he would turn himself in if Noah and I were protected. You do not surrender to buy forgiveness, I said. You surrender because it is what you should have done a long time ago. Elliot's phone rang. He was Lena Ortiz. Walter Keene had left Florida. A Vane-linked account had just transferred a large amount of money overseas. Federal investigators believed the network knew Graham was cooperating. For the first time in 4 years, Graham no longer controlled when the truth came out, or how much of it anyone would hear. But as Elliot sealed the evidence and began making calls, I understood the truth would not destroy only Grant Reyes. It would reach our house, Noah's education trust, and the legal remains of my marriage. Chapter 4. The Truth He Could No Longer Control. The consequences began moving faster than I could prepare for them. Special Agent Lena Ortiz arranged a formal meeting the next morning in a federal office near Tampa. Elliot sat beside me as my attorney. Graham arrived with Caleb Frost, a federal criminal defense lawyer Elliot had recommended, but did not work with directly. Rhea provided only the photographs, license records, and notes she had gathered legally. A forensic accountant joined by video to discuss the financial files. For the first time since I saw Graham on the plane, every person in the room had one clearly defined job. Lena handled the investigation into Vane Maritime Solutions. Caleb protected Graham's rights and advised him about surrender and cooperation. Elliot protected me from being treated as an extension of my husband's choices. Rhea documented what she had observed. No one asked me to trust Graham's version simply because he was finally willing to tell it. Lena placed a thin folder on the table. Vane Maritime has been under federal review for almost 2 years, she said. The suspected conduct includes money laundering, wire fraud, customs fraud, and conspiracy. Graham looked down at his hands. Lena continued, Jared Pike's emails show that you raised concerns before your disappearance. The files from the encrypted drive match shipping records and accounts already on our radar. Does that mean you believe him? I asked. It means parts of his account are independently supported. She looked directly at Graham.
It may also mean he was threatened and used as leverage. It does not erase what he did afterward. Caleb nodded once. Graham did not argue. The distinction mattered. He could be a victim of Malcolm Vane, and still be the person who made Noah believe his father was dead. Later that afternoon, I asked Tessa to meet me in a private lounge at the resort. Elliot stayed in the hallway. Rhea sat near the entrance, far enough away to give us privacy, but close enough to intervene if needed.
Graham was not there. I wanted Tessa to hear the truth without him reshaping it. She smiled when she entered, then stopped when she saw my face. "Is something wrong?" "Yes." She sat slowly. I placed a photograph on the table. It showed Graham, Noah, and me at a 4th of July picnic the summer before he disappeared. Grant Reyes is not his real name. Tessa stared at the photograph. His name is Graham Rowan. He is my husband. Noah is his son. Her eyes moved between the photograph and me. No. He disappeared in Maine 4 years ago. He was declared legally dead. No. Grant told me his wife died. He told you the story he needed you to believe. Her hand covered her mouth. For several seconds she could not speak. Then she noticed the wedding ring in the photograph. The same ring Graham wore, turned inward against his palm. Tessa pulled out her phone and opened one of the pictures she had shown me by the pool. The dates matched. The face matched. The hand matched. Her voice broke. "I lived with him for almost 2 years. "I know." "I thought I knew him." "So did I." She looked at me as if waiting for anger. "I did not know about you." "I believe you." "I would never have come near him if I knew." "You did not take my husband, Tessa. Graham took the truth from both of us." She started crying then, quietly and without drama. "I feel like I lost someone," she said. "But I do not even know if that person existed." "Not under the name you knew." Tessa did more than grieve. She gave us an email address Graham used only when traveling. She provided receipts from business trips, photographs of him meeting Walter Keane, and a calendar showing dates when Graham disappeared for what he called consulting work. She agreed to speak with Lena. Federal investigators later confirmed they had no evidence Tessa knowingly participated in anything illegal. Before leaving the resort, she sent Graham one short message: "Do not contact me again." She did not ask him for an explanation. He had already taken enough of her time. The insurance investigation began the next day. Marcus Hale, a senior investigator for the carrier, contacted Elliot rather than approaching me alone. He explained that the company's fraud system had found overlaps between Grant Reyes and Graham Rowan through rental car identification records and a related identity review. Marcus was careful about the boundaries of his role. He did not question me about Vane Maritime. He asked about the claims, the money, and what I knew when I filed the paperwork. Through Elliot, I provided the Coast Guard reports, the court order declaring Graham dead, the claim forms, bank records, and the documents for Noah's Education Trust. Graham had carried 2 separate term life policies. The first paid $185,000. It had been intended to protect our mortgage, and I had used the proceeds to pay down most of the balance on our home. The second paid $275,000. After legal expenses and reserves, $240,000 went into an irrevocable education trust for Noah. By the summer of 2025, it had grown to roughly $267,000. I had never used it for myself. That did not mean it was safe. The trust was temporarily frozen while the carrier reviewed its options. Marcus told Elliot the company reserved the right to pursue civil recovery. I might have to refinance the house. Noah could lose part of the money set aside for college. I had done nothing dishonest, but honesty did not place a wall between me and the consequences of Graham's choices. Caleb advised Graham to surrender voluntarily and seek a cooperation agreement. Before he agreed, Graham asked to speak with me. We met in Elliot's presence. Graham looked exhausted. If they ask whether I had another choice, will you tell them I did not? I studied him. No. His face tightened. I will tell them Malcolm Vane threatened our family. I will tell them you had a real reason to be afraid. I will tell them you believe disappearing would protect us. He waited. I will also tell them that by 2023 you had other options, and you chose not to use them. Aveline. I will not lie to hurt you. I will not lie to save you either. That was the moment I stopped being the woman who absorbed the consequences so everyone else could remain comfortable. I signed an affidavit that contained the whole truth, not the cruelest version, not the kindest version, the complete one. 3 days later, Lena called Elliot. The arrests had begun. Malcolm Vane was taken into custody in Boston. Walter Keane was arrested while attempting to leave through another airport. A financial director at Vane Maritime was arrested the same morning. The government's case did not depend on Graham alone. It included Jared's emails, Tessa's records, bank transfers, customs documents, and years of existing investigation. Walter was linked directly to the creation of Grant Rays, the false location data near Matinicus Island, and the monitoring that kept Graham silent afterwards. The machinery Graham had feared for 4 years was finally visible. A week later, he walked into a federal building with Caleb Frost. He surrendered the Grant Rays driver's license, a false passport, electronic devices, and the remaining files. Maya and Thomas stood near the entrance. Noah was not there. I would not let anyone use my son as proof that Graham deserved sympathy. Thomas looked at Graham before he went inside. Fear explains how this began, he said. It does not explain every year after. Graham lowered his head. He looked at me once. I did not take his hand. I did not tell him everything would be all right. After he entered the building, Elliot explained that overturning Graham's death certificate would not force me back into a marriage in any practical sense. The court would have to address the legal status formally. I asked him to begin the divorce. I also asked him to review custody, visitation, property rights, and every document that still gave Graham access or authority. That evening, I changed the passwords on every account connected to our old life. I closed the recovery access Graham had used. I updated beneficiaries. I reviewed Noah's guardianship plan. I removed Graham from every place where he could still reach into my finances or make decisions in my name. I did not post his photograph online. I did not call reporters. I did not destroy him. I simply stopped protecting the privileges he had abandoned. Outside the federal building, I looked down at the wedding ring I had worn through 4 years of believing my husband was dead. I pulled it from my finger. I did not throw it away. I did not return it to Graham. I placed it in my pocket like an object from a life that no longer belonged to me. Graham Rowan was alive. Our marriage was not. Chapter 5. The Life I Would Not Give Back. The first official meeting between Noah and Graham happened 3 weeks later in Dr. Miriam Cole's office. Miriam specialized in childhood grief and trauma. She made it clear that she was not deciding custody or visitation for the court. Her job was to help Noah enter the room without feeling trapped. He agreed to 20 minutes. Graham was not allowed to touch him without permission. He was not allowed to ask Noah to call him Dad. Noah could leave whenever he wanted. When Graham entered, Noah stared at the floor. Graham sat across from him and kept his hands in his lap. "I let you believe I was dead," he said. "I knew what school you attended, and I still did not come. I watched parts of your life from far away instead of being part of it. I told Tessa I did not have a son. I left your mother to carry everything alone." Noah finally looked up. "Did you ever plan to come back before Florida?"
Yes. How many times? Graham swallowed. More than once. Then why didn't you? Every time I got close, I was afraid. I kept telling myself I needed more evidence or more time. The truth is, I kept backing away. Noah's expression did not change. So I wasn't a big enough reason for you to stop being scared. Graham opened his mouth, but nothing came out. There was no answer that could make the question less painful. After a long silence, Graham said he hoped that one day he might earn the chance to be Noah's father again. Noah studied him with the calm, direct stare children sometimes have when adults have used too many words. "I already learned how to live without you." Graham's face collapsed. He covered his mouth and began to cry. I did not move toward him.
Miriam did not ask Noah to soften the sentence or offer a hug. She simply reminded him that he could end the meeting whenever he wanted. Noah stood. "I want to go home." I took his hand and walked him out. No court agreement could protect Graham from that moment. No cooperation credit could return the birthdays, school plays, and ordinary Tuesday nights he had chosen to watch from somewhere else. The legal process continued from late 2025 into early 2026. Because Graham surrendered voluntarily, had no prior criminal record, cooperated fully, and provided evidence used against Malcolm Vane, prosecutors offered a plea agreement. He also agreed to restitution and testified about the false records, shell companies, and threats used by Vane Maritime. Judge Eleanor Price approved a sentence of 5 years of probation, 8 months of home confinement, 600 hours of community service, financial monitoring, travel restrictions, mandatory therapy, and a restitution plan tied to his income. The judge did not treat Graham's years in hiding as time served. She said fear could explain why a person made a desperate decision. It could not erase the deliberate choices made afterward. The insurance settlement was slower and more frightening. Marcus Hill confirmed that I had relied on Coast Guard reports, a court order, and a valid death certificate when I filed the claims. I had not known Graham was alive, and I had disclosed everything as soon as I discovered the truth. The company accepted that I had acted in good faith. That did not mean there were no consequences. Graham accepted primary responsibility for restitution. I had to refinance part of the remaining mortgage. A portion of Noah's education trust was used to resolve the civil dispute, while the rest remained protected under an independent trustee. I increased my hours at Casco Bay Middle School for a while and rebuilt our budget. Justice did not return everything untouched. It simply stopped the damage from spreading further. Graham spent home confinement in a small apartment across town. He could not return to the logistics industry. He found remote administrative work, and his income was monitored under the restitution agreement. His community service placed him with an organization that supported families affected by maritime accidents. I did not call that redemption. It was a consequence. He attended therapy to confront the habits that had shaped his choices, his fear, his avoidance, his need to control what others knew, and his tendency to describe himself as a sacrifice, rather than admit when he had been a coward. I did not remind him about appointments. I did not manage his service schedule. I did not carry messages between him and Noah. For the first time, Graham had to manage the consequences without turning me into the person responsible for making them easier. Noah's recovery was not a straight line. Some weeks, he wanted to see Graham. Other weeks, he refused. Once, he called him Dad without thinking and became angry with himself afterward. Another time, he used Graham's first name through an entire visit. During dinner one evening, he suddenly asked whether Graham could disappear again. I told him I could not promise what another person would do. I could promise that no one would ever again keep him in the dark while I knew the truth. In one drawing he made during therapy, Graham stood outside a fence while Noah and I stood near the house. Miriam did not ask him to move Graham closer. The early visits remained short and supervised. Noah could end them at any time. I never used him to punish Graham. I also never asked him to forgive quickly so the adults could feel better. Maya and Thomas continued seeing Noah. Maya once suggested a family dinner so everyone could begin getting back to normal. There is no old normal to return to, I told her. We can build something different if Noah wants it. Thomas understood before Maya did. They began therapy themselves, trying to process the fact that they had mourned a son who had chosen to let them grieve. They never asked me to withdraw the divorce. Tessa moved back to Columbus, Ohio, near her sister. She continued cooperating until investigators no longer needed her. She was formally cleared of involvement in Graham's crimes. Months later, I received a short letter from her. She wrote that she had once believed she lost the man she loved. Now she understood. She was grieving a person who had never existed under the name she knew. She thanked me for telling her the truth, without treating her as if she had knowingly harmed me. We did not become friends. We did not need to. Refusing to add more pain was enough.
Jared Pike testified using the emails and reports he had saved. Rhea completed her work and stepped away once the federal investigation took over. Lena Ortiz continued building the case against Vane. Marcus closed the investigation into me without finding evidence of intentional fraud. Elliot completed the divorce, property agreements, custody plan, beneficiary changes, and the financial protection surrounding Noah. Sloane returned to being my friend and colleague, instead of the person holding my life together while I dealt with another crisis. Several months after the divorce became final, Graham asked if I would consider marriage counselling. We met in a public park while Noah was at school. "I know I cannot ask you to forget," he said, "but maybe we could understand what happened together."
I understand what happened. He looked down. I believe you were afraid. I believe you thought disappearing would protect us at first. I also believe there came a point when that explanation became a place for you to hide. I still love you. I do not hate you. He looked up, hope appearing too quickly. But I will not make you my husband again just because you came back alive. He asked whether I thought I could ever forgive him. Maybe part of forgiveness has already started, I said. But forgiveness, reconciliation, and marriage are 3 different decisions. Forgiveness is not an invitation back. I closed the old family email account. I changed every password. I updated guardianship documents and beneficiaries. I removed Graham from every financial access point he once held. I moved his remaining belongings out of our shared spaces without destroying them. I placed my wedding ring in a box beside the invalidated copy of his death certificate. Not as symbols of love, as evidence of a life I had survived. One spring evening, Noah set the table for 2. Graham was not forbidden from coming. Noah had simply chosen to have dinner with me that night. He talked about a school project, a new friend, and what he wanted to do during summer vacation. For an entire meal, the man who had died and returned was not the center of our lives. I looked at the empty chair Graham once used. It no longer felt like someone was missing. 4 years earlier, I had buried a living man. Now I buried the last belief that his return could restore the family we had been. Graham survived the water. Our marriage did not. But Noah and I were not the remains of a tragedy, We were a family that had learned how to live inside the truth. I could not recover the 4 years Graham had taken from us. I could only stop allowing him to decide what happened in the next one. I turned off the dining room light, took Noah's hand, and walked upstairs without looking back at the empty chair. If you were in my place, would you allow Graham to return as a father but never again as a husband? Tell me where you would draw the line, and subscribe for more stories about women who finally chose the truth, their children, and themselves.